The Yardbirds are an English rock band that had a string of hits in the mid-1960s, including For Your Love, Over Under Sideways Down, and Heart Full of Soul. The group is notable for having started the careers of three of rock's most famous guitarists, Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, all of whom were in the top 5 of Rolling Stone's 100 Top Guitarists list. A blues-based band that broadened its range into pop and rock, the Yardbirds had a hand in many electric guitar innovations of the mid-1960s, such as feedback, fuzztone distortion and improved amplification. Pat Pemberton, writing for Spinner, holds that the Yardbirds were the most impressive guitar band in rock music. After the Yardbirds broke up in 1968, their lead guitarist Jimmy Page founded what became Led Zeppelin. The bulk of the band's most successful self-written songs came from bassist-producer Paul Samwell Smith who, with singer-harmonica player Keith Relf, drummer Jim McCarty and rhythm guitarist-bassist Chris Dreger, constituted the core of the group. The band reformed in the 1990s, featuring McCarty, Dreger and new members. The Yardbirds were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992. They were included in Rolling Stone's list of the 100 Greatest Artists of All Time, and VH1's 100 Greatest Artists of Hard Rock. History, beginnings. The group formed in the southwest London suburbs. Relf and Samwell Smith were originally in a group named the Metropolitan Blues Quartet. After being joined by Dreger, McCarty and Topham in late May 1963, they decided to change the name, and after a couple of gigs in September 1963 as the Blue Sounds, they settled on the Yardbirds, which was both an expression for hobos hanging around rail yards waiting for a train and also a reference to the jazz saxophonist Charlie Yardbird Parker. At Kingston Arts School in late May 1963 they first performed as a backup band for Cyril Davis, and achieved notice on the burgeoning British rhythm and blues scene in September 1963 when they took over as the house band at the Crawdaddy Club in Richmond, succeeding the Rolling Stones. They drew their repertoire from the Chicago blues of Howlin' Wolf, Muddy Waters, Bo Diddley, Sonny Boy Williamson II and Elmore James, including Smokestack Lightning, Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, Boom Boom, I Wish You Would, Rollin' and Tumblin', and I'm a Man. Original lead guitarist Topham left and was replaced by Eric Clapton in October 1963. Crawdaddy Club impresario Giorgio Gomelsky became the Yardbirds' manager and first record producer. Under Gomelsky's guidance the Yardbirds signed to EMI's Columbia label in February 1964. Their first album was the Live, 5 Live Yardbirds, recorded at the legendary Marquee Club in London. Blues legend Sonny Boy Williamson II invited the group to tour Britain and Germany with him, a union that later engendered another live album. Breakthrough success and Clapton departure, the quintet cut 2 singles, I Wish You Would, and Good Morning, Schoolgirl, before their third, For Your Love, a Graham Gouldman composition, provided their first major hit. It sold over 1 million copies, and was awarded a gold disc. Clapton, at the time a blues purist, left the group in protest to join John Mayall and the Blues Breakers and then later, Cream. Clapton recommended Jimmy Page, a prominent young studio session guitarist, as his replacement. Page, uncertain about giving up his lucrative studio work and worried about his health, recommended in turn his friend Jeff Beck. Beck played his first gig with the Yardbirds only 2 days after Clapton's departure on March 25, 1965. Jeff Beck's tenure, Beck's experiments with fuzztone, feedback and distortion fit well into the increasingly raw style of British beat music and the Yardbirds began to experiment, producing arrangements reminiscent of Gregorian chant and various European and Asian styles. Beck was voted No. A1 lead guitarist of 1966 in the British music magazine Beat Instrumental. The Beck-era Yardbirds produced a number of memorable recordings including the hit singles Heart Full of Soul, Evil-Hearted You, a cover of Bo Diddley's I'm a Man, Shapes of Things, and Over Under Sideways Down, and the Yardbirds album. The Yardbirds embarked on their first U.S. tour in late August 1965. A pair of albums were put together for the U.S. market. For Your Love, and Having a Rave Up, half of which came from 5 Live Yardbirds. There were 3 more US tours during Beck's time with the group. A brief European tour took place in April 1966. In 1966, the Yardbirds participated in the Sanremo Music Festival with song Paf Bum with Italian songwriter Lucio Dalla. The Beck-Page lineup. In June 1966, shortly after the sessions that produced Yardbirds, Samuel Smith decided to leave the group and work as a record producer. Jimmy Page agreed to play bass until rhythm guitarist Dredger had rehearsed on that instrument. The Beck-Page tandem is heard on the single Happenings 10 Years Time Ago, though this featured Beck and Page on twin lead guitar, with John Paul Jones on bass. It was backed with Psycho Daisies, which featured Beck on lead guitar and Page on bass. The Beck-Page era Yardbirds also recorded Stroll On, a reworking of Train Kept a Rollin' recorded for the Michelangelo Antonioni film Blow Up, though Ralph changed the lyrics and title to avoid seeking permission from the copyright holder. Stroll On features a twin lead guitar break by Beck and Page. Their appearance in Blow Up came after the Who declined and the in crowd were unable to attend the filming. The Velvet Underground were also considered for the part but were unable to acquire UK work permits. Director Michelangelo Antonioni instructed Beck to smash his guitar in emulation of The Who's Pete Townshend. The guitar that Beck smashes at the end of their set is a cheap German-made Hofner instrument. The Beck-Page lineup recorded little else in the studio and no live recordings of the dual-lead guitar lineup have surfaced. The Beck-Page Yardbirds recorded a commercial for a milkshake product Great Shakes using the opening riff of Over Under Sideways Down, featured on 1992's Little Games Sessions and More compilation. There was also one recording made by Beck and Page with John Paul Jones on bass, Keith Moon on drums and Nicky Hopkins on piano. A Beck's Bolero, a piece inspired by Ravel's Bolero, credited to Page. Beck's Bolero was first released as the B-side of Beck's first solo single, Hi Ho Silver Lining, and was included on his first album, Truth. The Yardbirds' final days. The Page era, Beck was sacked from the group for being a consistent no-shower as well as for difficulties caused by his perfectionism and explosive temper, after a tour stop in Texas in late October 1966. As such, the Yardbirds continued as a quartet for the remainder of their career. Page became the new lead guitarist and introduced his technique of playing with a cello bow and the use of a wah-wah pedal. Meanwhile, the Yardbirds' commercial fortunes were declining. Happenings 10 Years Time Ago had only reached no. 30 on the US Hot 100 and had fared even worse in Britain. A partnership with Columbia's hit-making producer, Mickey Most, failed to reignite their commercial success. The Little Games single released in spring 1967 flopped so badly in the UK that EMI did not release another Yardbirds record there until after the band broke up. A version of Tony Hazard's Ha Ha Said the Clown on which only one band member, Ralph, actually performed was the band's last single to crack the US Top 50, peaking at no. 44 in Billboard in the summer of 1967. Their final album, Little Games, released in America in July, was a commercial and critical non-entity. A cover of Harry Nilsson's 10 Little Indians hit the US in the autumn of 1967 and quickly sank. The Yardbirds spent most of the rest of that year touring in the States with new manager Peter Grant, their live shows becoming heavier and more experimental. The group rarely played their 1967 singles on stage, preferring to mix the Beck-era hits with blues standards and covers from groups such as the Velvet Underground and American folk singer Jake Holmes, whose Dazed and Confused, with lyrics rewritten by Ralph, was a live staple of the Yardbirds' last 2 American tours. The latter went down so well that Page selected it for the first Led Zeppelin record, on which it appears with further revised lyrics and Page credited as writer. By 1968 Ralph and McCarthy wished to pursue a style influenced by folk and classical music while Page, at a time when the psychedelic blues rock of Cream and the Jimi Hendrix Experience was enormously popular, wanted to continue with the kind of heavy music for which Led Zeppelin would become iconic. Dredger was developing an interest in photography. By March, Ralph and McCarthy had decided to leave, though the other two managed to persuade them to stay at least for one more American tour. The Yardbirds' final single, recorded in January and released 2 months later, reflected these divergences. The A-side, Goodnight Sweet Josephine, was in the same vein as their Mickey most produced singles of the previous year, while its B-side, Think About It, featured a proto-Zeppelin Page riff and snippets of the dazed guitar solo. This last single did not even crack the Hot 100. A concert and some album tracks were recorded in New York City in March. All were shelved at the group's request. However, once Led Zeppelin became successful, Epic tried to release the concert material as Live Yardbirds, featuring Jimmy Page. The album was quickly withdrawn after Page's lawyers filed an injunction. On July 7, 1968, the Yardbirds played their final gig at the College of Technology in Luton, Bedfordshire. Rolling Stone magazine announced the breakup by saying that Jimmy Page, sick, intends to go into solo recording work. The Yardbirds and Led Zeppelin, Page and Dredger, with a tour scheduled for the autumn in Scandinavia, saw the breakup as an opportunity to put a new lineup together with Page as producer and Grant as manager. Procol Harum's B.J. Wilson, Paul Francis and session man Clem Catini, who'd guested on more than a few Yardbirds tracks under Most's supervision, were considered as drummers. Young vocalist and composer Terry Reid was asked to replace Ralph but declined because of a new recording contract with Most and recommended the then unknown Robert Plant. Plant, in turn, recommended his childhood friend John Bonham on drums. Dredger bowed out to pursue a career as a rock photographer and bassist-arranger John Paul Jones a Euro, who, like Catini, had worked with Page on countless sessions, including several with the Yardbirds a Euro was recruited. Rehearsals began in August. In early September, Page's revised Yardbirds embarked on the Scandinavian tour, after which the group returned to the UK to produce an album, still billed as the Yardbirds, as late as October 1968. While Page's new roster still played a few songs from the Yardbirds canon a Euro, usually Train Kept a Rollin', Dazed and Confused, or For Your Love a Euro, a name change was in order as the autumn of 1968 drew to a close. This may have been motivated, at least in part, by a cease and desist order from Dredger, who claimed that he maintained legal rights to the Yardbirds name. Other reports indicate it was Page's desire to wipe the slate clean. Whatever the reason, the band restyled itself Led Zeppelin, a term believed to have been coined, originally, by Keith Moon in reference to the supergroup that has performed on Beck's Bolero. Moon had quipped that a Beck-Hopkins-Page lineup would go down like a Led Zeppelin. The spelling of lead was changed to avoid confusion over its pronunciation. This effectively closed the books on the Yardbirds a Euro, at least by name a Euro, for the next 24 years. After the Yardbirds, Ralph and McCarty formed an acoustic rock group called Together and Then Renaissance, which recorded 2 albums for Island Records over a 2-year period. McCarty formed the group Shoot in 1973. Ralph, after producing albums for Medicine Head and Saturnalia, resurfaced in 1975 with a new quartet, Armageddon. A hybrid of heavy metal, hard rock and folk influences, which now included former Renaissance bandmate Louis Sinamo. They recorded one promising album before Ralph died in an electrical accident in his home studio on May 14, 1976. In 1977, Illusion was formed, featuring a reunited lineup of the original Renaissance, including McCarty and Keith's sister Jane Ralph. In the 1980s, McCarty, Dredger and Samuel Smith formed a short-lived but fun Yardbirds semi-reunion called Box of Frogs, which occasionally included Beck and Page plus various friends with whom they had all recorded over the years. McCarty was also part of the British Invasion All-Stars with members of Procol Harum, Creation, the Nashville Teens, the Downliners Sect and the Pretty Things. Phil May and Dick Taylor of the Pretty Things, together with McCarty, recorded 2 albums in Chicago as the Pretty Things Yardbirds blues band a Euro, the Chicago Blues Tapes 1991, and Wine, Women, Whiskey, both produced by George Paulus. The Yardbirds were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1992. Nearly all the original surviving musicians who had been part of the group's heyday, including Jeff Beck and Jimmy Page, appeared at the ceremony. Eric Clapton, whose Hall of Fame induction was the first of 3, was unable to attend because of his obligations while recording and working on a show for the MTV Unplugged series. Accepting the induction on behalf of the late Keith Relf were his wife April and son Danny. Reformation. In 1992, Peter Barton from Rock Artist Management contacted Jim McCarty about the prospect of reforming the Yardbirds. McCarty was interested but only if Chris Dredger would agree, but at the time he thought it highly unlikely that Dredger would want to tour again. Barton then contacted Dredger, who agreed to give it a try. Their debut gig was booked at the Marquee Club in London along with the newly reformed Animals. It was a great success. The lineup featured John Iden handling bass and lead vocals. Barton managed the band and booked all their dates for over a decade. He still works with the band on occasion. In 2003, a new album, Broadened, was released under the Yardbirds name on the Favored Nations label by a lineup including Chris Dredger, Jim McCarty and new members Jippy Mayo, John Iden and Alan Glenn, which consisted of a mixture of new material mostly penned by McCarty and re-recordings of some of their greatest hits, with guest appearances by Joe Satriani, Steve V. / Brian May, Steve Lukather, Jeff Skunk Baxter, John Rotsatsik, Martin Ditcham and Simon McCarty. Also, Jeff Beck reunited with his former bandmates on the song My Blind Life. And then there was the rare and improbable guest appearance on stage in 2005 by their first guitarist from the 1960s, Top Topham. Since the release of Birdland, Mayo has been briefly replaced by Jerry Donahue, and subsequently in 2005 by the then 22-year-old Ben King, while Glenn has been replaced by Billy Boy Miskey Min from 9 Below Zero fame. In 2007 the Yardbirds released a live CD, recorded on July 19, 2006, entitled Live at B.B. King Blues Club, featuring the McCarty, Dredger, Iden, King and Miskey Min lineup. The first episode of the 2007 August season for The Simpsons featured the Yardbirds' I'm a Man from the CD Live at B.B. King Blues Club. According to his website, Iden resigned from the Yardbirds in August 2008, although his last gig with them was on Friday 24 April 2009, when they headlined the first concert in the new Live Room venue at Twickenham Rugby Stadium. This was also Glenn's last gig with the band after temporarily standing in when Miskey Min was unavailable. Iden and Glenn were replaced by Andy Mitchell and David Smale, brother of the virtuoso guitarist Jonathan Smale. Dredger sat out the U.S. Spring 2012 tour to recover from an illness. It was announced in 2013 that he was leaving the band for medical reasons and would be replaced by original Yardbirds guitarist Topham. Members. Current members: Jim McCarty Euro drums, backing vocals, Anthony Top Topham Euro lead rhythm guitar, Ben King Euro lead guitar, David Smale Euro bass, backing vocals, Andy Mitchell Euro lead vocals, harmonica, acoustic guitar. Former members: Keith Relf Euro lead vocals, harmonica, Chris Dredger Euro rhythm guitar, bass, percussion, Paul Samwell Smith Euro bass, backing vocals, Eric Clapton Euro lead guitar, Jeff Beck Euro lead guitar, Jimmy Page Euro lead guitar, bass, John Knightsbridge Euro lead guitar, backing vocals, Mark Feltham Euro lead vocals, harmonica, Joe Allanson Euro bass, Rod Demick Euro bass, harmonica, backing vocals, John Iden Euro lead vocals, bass, lead guitar, Ray Majors Euro lead guitar, backing vocals, Laurie Garman Euro harmonica, Denny Ball, bass guitar during brief reshuffle for Jippy Mayo timeout. John Iden moved to lead guitar, Jippy Mayo Euro lead guitar, backing vocals, Alan Glenn Euro harmonica, percussion, Billy Boy Miskey Min Euro harmonica, percussion, Jerry Donahue Euro lead guitar. Discography. 5 Live Yardbirds, For Your Love, Having a Rave Up, Roger the Engineer, Little Games, Birdland, see also, Freakbeat, Swinging London. References, Bibliography, Bob Brunning Blues, The British Connection, London, Helter Skelter, 2002, ISBN 1-9000-924-41-2, Dick Hextall Smith The Safest Place in the World, A Personal History of British Rhythm and Blues, Clear Books, ISBN 0-7043-2 2696-5 a Euro first edition A Blowing the Blues a Euro 50 Years Playing the British Blues, Christopher George Strange Brew. Eric Clapton and the British Blues Boom, 1965 a Euro 1970, foreword by John Mayall, Jawbone ISBN 1-906 2002, Paul Myers, Long John Baldry and the Birth of the British Blues, Vancouver 2007 a Euro Greystone Books, Harry Shapiro Alexis Corner, The Biography, Bloomsbury Publishing plc, London 1997, discography by Mark Troster, Yardbirds Sidgwick and Jackson, 1983. ISBN 0-283-98982-3. Yardbirds at the Ultimate Rave Up Crossfire Publications, 1997. ISBN 0-9648157-8-8. The Yardbirds Backbeat Books, 2002. ISBN 0-87930-724-2, Notes. External links, official website, Yardbirds American website, The Yardbirds at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Favored Nations Yardbirds webpage.